America was explored thousands of years before the first Europeans hit ground at Plymouth Rock. Following in the footsteps of the brave beaver by about 3,000 years, approximately 30,000 years ago, the Paleo-Indians, the ancestors of Native Americans, followed herds of animals from Siberia across Beringia, a land bridge connecting Asia and North America into Alaska. By 8000 BC, these people had spread across North and South America. About 1000 BC to about 1 AD, the Adena people were a group of well-organized societies that lived in parts of present-day Ohio, Indiana, Wisconsin, West Virginia, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New York. The Adena people were not a single tribe, but rather a group of Native Americans that shared similarities in artifact style, architecture, and other cultural practices, including a common burial and ceremonial system that included mound building. The Adena were the first group of mound builders, a practice that spanned several cultures over a period of about 20 centuries. Around 200 BC, the Hopewell Native American culture began to develop across the Midwest of what is now the United States, with its epicenter in Ohio. The Hopewell tradition describes a network of pre-contact Native American cultures that flourished in settlements along rivers in the northeastern and midwestern eastern woodlands in the Middle Woodland period. The Hopewell tradition was not a single culture or society, but a widely dispersed set of populations connected by a common network of trade routes. At its greatest extent, the Hopewell exchange system ran from the northern shores of Lake Ontario south to the Crystal River Indian mounds of modern-day Florida. Within this area, societies exchanged goods and ideas, with the highest amount of activity along waterways, which were the main transportation routes. Peoples within the Hopewell exchange system received materials from all over the territory of what now comprises the mainland United States. Most of the items traded were exotic materials. They were delivered to people living in the major trading and manufacturing areas. These people converted raw materials into products and exported them through local and regional exchange networks. Hopewell communities traded finished goods, such as steatite or soapstone platform pipes. Far and wide, they have been found among grave goods in many burials outside of the Midwest. The Hopewell culture began to decline from around 400 AD for reasons which do remain unclear. The Monongahela culture, or an Iroquoian Native American cultural manifestation of late woodland people from AD 1050 to 1635 in present-day western Pennsylvania, western Maryland, eastern Ohio, and West Virginia. The Monongahela practiced maize agriculture and lived in well-laid-out villages, some of which consisted of as many as 500 to 100 structures. They traded with other Indian groups, who in turn traded with Europeans. The Monongahela seem to have disappeared sometime during the 1620s or 1630s before having significant direct contact with Europeans. By around 1100 AD, many distinct Iroquoian-speaking and Algonquin-speaking cultures had developed in what would become New York State and New England. Predominant Algonquin tribes included the Abenakis, Mi'kmaq, Penobscot, Pequots, Mohicans, Narragansetts, Pocumtucks, and Wampanoag. Massasoit, a Pokanoket chief and Indian tribe, part of the Wampanoag tribe, an Algonquin affiliate, had maintained a long-standing alliance with the colonists. Metacomet, his younger son, had become tribal chief in 1662 after Massasoit's death. Metacomet was born when the English had been in the land for about 18 years and grew up only knowing the tension and conflict between the immigrants and its native people. The Plymouth colony had been established in 1620, and his father, Massasoit, had chosen to help them survive, sending Squanto, also known as Tisquantum, to teach them how to plant crops, hunt, and fish. The success of the Plymouth colony encouraged further English colonization between 1620 and 1628, with the largest group of 700 Puritans arriving in 1630 under the leadership of John Winthrop to develop the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Massasoit and John Carver of Plymouth had signed a peace treaty in March of 1621, which continued to be honored. Massasoit had kept the Wampanoag tribe out of the Pequot War and maintained the friendly relations he had forged with the Plymouth colony. Colonist and the late Governor Edward Winslow had saved Massasoit's life years before, as well as a number of his tribe when illness struck, and both parties had benefited from the 1621 treaty. The Pequots and their troubles were none of Massasoit's concerns, as he had an agreement with Plymouth that they would not have intruded upon his territory, which stretched from modern-day Rhode Island through Massachusetts. The Massachusetts Bay Colony, however, had no such agreement with Massasoit, and while they had yet to threaten Pokanoket land, they had drew near as they took land from other tribes. Metacomet decided to forsake his father's alliance between the Pokanoket and the colonists. The colonists insisted that the 1671 peace agreement should not include the surrender of native guns. Then 3 Pokanoket were hung in Plymouth colony in 1675 for the murder of another Pokanoket, which increased tensions tremendously. Native raiding parties attacked homesteads and villages throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Maine over the next 6 months, and the colonial militia retaliated. The neighboring Naganesets remained neutral, but some Naganesets participated in raids of colonial strongholds and militia, so colonial leaders deemed them to be in violation of peace treaties. The colonies assembled the largest army that New England had yet to muster, consisting of 1,000 militia and 100 native allies. Initially, Metacom sought to live in harmony with the colonists. As a Sachem, he took the lead with much of his tribe's trade with the colonies. He adopted the European name Philip and bought his clothes in Boston, Massachusetts. The colonies continued to expand. To the west, the Iroquois Confederation also was fighting against the neighboring tribes in the Beaver Wars, pushing them from the west and encroaching on Metacom's territory. The Beaver Wars were a series of conflicts fought intermittently during the 17th century in North America through the St. Lawrence River Valley in Canada and the Great Lakes region, which pitted the Iroquois against the Hurons, northern Algonquins, and their French allies. As a result of this conflict, the Iroquois destroyed several confederacies of Ohio Valley tribes through warfare whom they defeated and dispersed, some fleeing to neighboring peoples, and others assimilated, routed, or killed. The Iroquois sought to expand their territory and monopolize the fur trade with European markets. They originally were a confederacy of Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca tribes, inhabiting the lands in which is now upstate New York, along the shores of Lake Ontario, east to Lake Champlain and Lake George on the Hudson River. The Iroquois Confederation, led by the Mohawks, mobilized against the largely Algonquian-speaking tribes and Iroquois-speaking Huron and other related tribes of the Great Lakes region. The Iroquois were supplied with arms by their Dutch and English trading partners. The Algonquins and Hurons were backed by the French, their chief trading partner. The Iroquois effectively destroyed several large tribal confederations, including the Mohicans, Huron-Wyandot, Neutral Confederacy, and Erie Indians, Susquehannock, and Northern Algonquins, with the extreme brutality and exterminatory nature of a mode of warfare practiced by the Iroquois caused some historians to label these wars as acts of genocide committed by the Iroquois Confederacy. They became dominant in the region and enlarged their territory, realigned the American tribal geography. The Iroquois gained control of New England frontier and the Ohio River Valley lands as hunting grounds from about 1670 onward. Both Algonquin and Iroquoian societies were greatly disrupted by these wars. The conflict subsided when the Iroquois lost their Dutch allies in the colony of New Netherland after the English took it over in 1664, along with Fort Amsterdam and the town of New Amsterdam on the island of Manhattan. The French then attempted to gain the Iroquois as an ally against the English, but the Iroquois refused to break their alliance and frequently fought against the French in the 18th century. The Anglo-Iroquois alliance would reach its zenith during the French and Indian War of 1754, which saw the French being largely expelled from North America. The wars and subsequent commercial trapping of the beavers was devastating to local beaver populations. Trapping continued to spread across North America, extirpating and severely reducing populations across the continent. The natural ecosystems that came to rely on the beavers for dams, water, and other vital needs were also devastated, leading to ecological destruction, environmental changes, and drought in certain areas. The beaver populations in North America would take centuries to recover in some populations, while others would never recover. In 1662, the Plymouth colonists began to suspect that natives were planning an attack on the colony and prompted an arrest of Alexander. King Philip used tribal alliances to coordinate efforts to push European colonists out of New England. Many of the native tribes in the region wanted to push out of the colonies, following conflicts over land use. As the colonists brought their growing numbers to bear, King Philip and some of his followers took refuge in the Great Assasawampset Swamp in southern Massachusetts. He held out for a time with his family and remaining followers. Hunted by a group of rangers led by Captain Benjamin Church, King Philip was fatally shot by a praying Indian named John Alderman on August 12, 1676, in the miry swamp near Mount Hope in Bristol, Rhode Island. He was shot by Alderman for killing his brother. After his death, his wife and 9-year-old son were captured and sold as slaves in Bermuda. Philip's head was mounted on a pike at the entrance of Plymouth, Massachusetts, where it remained for more than 2 decades. His body was cut into quarters and hung in trees. Alderman was given Philip's right hand as a trophy. The world of the early colonies was more than just the stories of cowboys and Indians. It was a story of survival. The English and Iroquois both had their hand in shaping this region during this time period, and the stories that come from this are certainly worth sitting around and hearing about. So thank you guys for checking out this video and stop by the channel. And if you like this video and videos like this, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, share this video, like it, yada yada yada. Thanks, guys. Always remember to get out there and explore.